to our next speaker. I'd like to introduce Dr. Andy Rees. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm afraid I'm just going to do sort of a boring governmenty stuff, but I'll try and enliven it and maybe challenge you a bit here and there as well once my presentation comes up. Brilliant. I'm partly doing this under our Circular Economy for SMEs, SESME Interreg Europe project, where we're involved with 5 other regions of the EU, looking at what policy instruments we can adopt in our regions to embed circular economy in SMEs. I was originally down to speak at the Chartered Institute of Waste Management National Conference in London today, but I chose to come here instead because I'd much rather be with an audience of business people than a load of wasters, I have to admit. I've had enough of waste. The whole point of SESME and the angle that we're really pushing is circular economy innovation. And we've heard a lot about that today, and I look forward to what Gary will say in a few minutes. The linear model of take, make, use, which is often left out in all of this, using a product has quite a big impact, and then losing it to either incineration or landfill is something we want to get away from. Something I mentioned this morning, is why should you as a business audience care about circular economy? Well, some of the key things are your customers will be demanding it before too long. If you supply to a major supermarket, they certainly will be demanding it. And some of the major multinationals and multinational brands will be demanding more resource-efficient products. The automotive sector will be doing it as well. And also, a new announcement I heard half an hour ago that the Circular Economy Package amendments to 6 EU waste directives was today published in the official journal of the European Union. So it is now EU law. And DEFRA, UK government, have indicated that it will be transposed into England, and we can do it for Wales, and Scotland can do it, and Northern Ireland can do it. Maybe we might do it all together. So that also requires extended producer responsibility, whereby the manufacturers of certain products will bear the full end-of-life responsibility in terms of cost of how those products are managed at end of life, including possibly the impact on litter. And that will have a major impact on companies who put packaging onto the market. You've seen various versions of the circular economy butterfly loop. Here's one produced by Rhys Charles in the engineering department in Swansea University. Interestingly, I've just noticed earlier that he's missed out in this part of it here. We should really have leasing and renting and servitisation should be in there as well. Examples with furniture that could be leased or carpet tiles. We've got Ellen in the audience there who's very good, works with the social enterprise Greenstream Flooring to provide reusable carpet tiles. But maybe you could look at a leasing model in the future. The other aspects, I won't dwell on this, but industrial symbiosis, 17 million tonnes of pulverised fuel ash sitting outside Aberthorpe Power Station, a massive, hopefully new construction, something quite big, not a million miles away from here in the sea. Maybe you could take some of that pulverised fuel ash and use that instead of virgin aggregate. And we have the bioeconomy that we heard earlier. The reason we've got to get our act together is because major economies around the world are ahead of the game on us in some areas, and also multinationals are getting on board with circular economy and resource efficiency. It is at the boardroom level, it is at national government level. We've got to play our part in what will be a very challenging future when we leave the European Union. I won't dwell on that. Some of the analysis we've had done through the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and WRAP show for just those 2 sectors alone, there's up to £2 billion of economic savings for Wales, and WRAP have done something since that shows it could be £5 billion per year of economic savings by adopting a full transition to a circular economy. Another bit of work showed it could be up to 30,000 new jobs could be created. Just the boring bits here. Waste and economy have been devolved to the Welsh Government since 1999. So all these UK industrial strategies, clean growth strategies, only apply to England, except when there's money available at a UK level, so we'll have some of that. But we have our own devolved responsibility for economy and environment and waste. So it's our responsibility to make sure we have a resource-efficient circular economy. We have our sustainable development duty and natural resources policy. Just to correct an earlier speaker who said we had to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2040, actually there was a target for 80% by 2050. That is a statutory target on the Welsh Government. That will revolutionise how we use energy and everything else that we do that generates carbon. Prosperity for All, the national strategy, commits us to produce a route map for a more resource-efficient economy. I say we already have that through Towards Zero Waste, our strategy in 2010, but we need to update it and have a proper or a more up-to-date action plan. I'm working with colleagues across the Welsh Government and other departments to remind them it's their job to sort out waste and resource efficiency in their function, not my job. So when the letters come in saying the health service isn't managing its waste properly, that's the health service's responsibility to sort out, not mine. And I keep reminding everybody that using resources efficiently is a statutory requirement under the wellbeing goal. We're starting to have some traction on that, and I haven't had to reply to quite a few letters recently. Other departments have had to do it. The Economic Action Plan for Wales, there are sections in there on resource efficiency and circular economy. So again, emphasising we'll publish our route map. And then just to highlight this bit, embedding resource efficiency within our programme of innovation support to SMEs by using public sector procurement as a lever to create new opportunities for resource efficient manufacturing in Wales. That's where we can make a big difference and where we do have leverage. We can't persuade business to business procurement to sort of sort itself out, although we can do partly through legislation, but this is an area where we think we can do a lot. There's a very handy guide published by the European Commission under their Green Procurement Programme a few months ago. And I think it's this one, Alan, that has the Public Health Wales office remanufactured furniture and reused carpet tiles example that has now won awards in Wales, UK and at an EU level. A fantastic example where something like 2,300 items of office furniture were remanufactured and reused, and a lot of carpet tiles too. So thanks to Alan. And jobs were created in the social economy there. So huge tick. I shouldn't say ticks the boxes of the wellbeing goals, that's the wrong thing to say, but it embeds the wellbeing principles, the goals and ways of working into that project. A study that I mentioned earlier, done by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation with WRAP, showed that Wales is a fertile ground for a circular economy. We lead UK in recycling, we're second in Europe and third in the world in terms of our recycling rate. And with our wellbeing goal, Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, etc., and all of the other things there. We also have a fantastic historical legacy of manufacturing and the skills base there. We still have a good manufacturing industry. I think, I'll look at Steve here, I think proportionally higher than other parts of the UK, our manufacturing base, yeah. Maybe with Brexit, there might be some opportunities in the future for more manufacturing back in Wales. And Better Jobs Closer to Home is a Welsh Government initiative to reshore some manufacturing back into Wales and get the public sector to buy those goods through something like Teckle companies. I think that's how it's working. Just to stress that circular economy isn't just about recycling. As I mentioned earlier, it's about those inner circles. And we need circular economy business models involving schools of management to support engineering departments all working together to come up with the right solutions. So in terms of having services and products that have a good durability, easy to repair, easy to reuse, and then can be remanufactured, etc. But also importantly, a circular economy is a process, it's not an end outcome. You can have a circular economy and still use 3 planets worth of resources if we keep growing. So we've got to make sure we have less raw material per unit product or per unit service in all of this to achieve our one planet goal of resource use. And I think we're the only administration in the world, or one of the very few ones, to have that one planet resource use goal. As several people have said earlier, we were involved in the BSI 8001 Circular Economy Standard. So there's a copy of it there. Unfortunately, you have to pay, it's either £50 or £100, I think, depending upon the type of organisation you are. but it is designed to help organisations, not just businesses, move towards a circular economy approach. And just in conclusion, for those of you businesses providing services, products, this is going to be the future, come what may. Either because we have to, because we're running out of resources, or can't afford to buy them and import them, and we'll have to be more self-sufficient. It is going to happen, or it will be driven by government through legislation and procurement, and probably a combination of all three. So as a government, we're really, really keen to try and get Wales ahead of the game here. It's fantastic this event has been organised today. I think it's the first of its kind in Wales, but it's really great to see so many people here. So my question really for the discussion, if we have time afterwards, is what can the Welsh Government do to make it happen and really help support you become more resource efficient and thrive as businesses in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Just before we do go into this open room discussion, we have one more talk left, and I'd like to introduce you to Gary Walpole.
The technology will work. They did used to say never work with children and animals. I think you should add technology to that. But I almost feel obliged to do a hands up or a stand up exercise. So I might do that first, then introduce myself. So I'm conscious you've been sat down for a while. So just as a kind of little straw poll and a bit of fun, could all of you stand up, please? Okay, so I'm going to set a bit of a challenge. This is a bit on the hoof, so excuse me for this. So the most recent BIS of a UK government survey on innovation active businesses came out with a figure. So I'd like the number of you that represents the percentage of innovation active businesses in the UK to sit down. So I'll explain that in kind of more lay terms, or better terms for me to understand. So there's a percentage of businesses in the UK that are innovation active, and I'd like to guess at what you think that might be, and then working with everyone else in the room, which is where the challenge comes in, is you kind of look at the guy opposite you and think, okay, well, if I think it's a quarter, about 3/4 of us are going to have to sit down. If I think it's 75%, then only a quarter of us are going to have to sit down. So how do you think we try that? So what percentage of businesses in the UK do you think are innovation active? Steve probably knows the answer to this, but so sit down to represent and who aren't. Okay, that's great. What would you say is left? Yeah, somebody shouted 50%. Excellent. So the 2014 survey, which is covered, you can all sit down now if you like. Although I might get you to stand up again in a minute, because I'd quite like that. Yeah, the 2014 BIS survey stated that 53% of businesses in the UK are innovation active. Okay, now what that means is businesses that are engaged in either continuous improvement or new product development across the piece. Now, interestingly, 61% of large businesses are innovation active. But as probably, again, most of you know, 99% of all businesses in the UK are SMEs. So obviously, it brings it down to 53%. Another interesting figure, I'm going to do that only stand up this time, because the last bit was a bit confusing, wasn't it? But I wanted to get everyone to stand up. So what percentage of all businesses in the UK do you think are developing new products? And they're pretty broad definitions, actually, that they use, BIS. So what percentage? So those... So,
new services or just products?
New services as well. So it's NPDSS, generally, new products or service solutions. Okay. Developing new products or service solutions. What percentage do you think?
40.
40? 70? Wow. No, actually, 19% of businesses, so less than a fifth, are developing new products or services. And that was up from 2012, and that was 18 actually. So that's the context to what I'm going to talk about this afternoon. I might have to click again here. Yeah, there you go. Click again. I've worked up the technology now. Thanks for that. So I did a piece of research after working with Andy, and that was funded by Andy. But to give you some background on me, now we give you some context on what I'm going to talk about. I'm Director of ION Leadership. ION is a successor to the LEAD programme, and we've basically helped develop 1,200 business leaders throughout Wales over the last 7 years. ION is the new brand for Lead Wales, and we're based in Swansea University, as the logo at the bottom might suggest. And I'm also an SL, or a senior lecturer, in the School of Management at the same time. So juggling a couple of things. My specific interest is actually the leadership of innovation. And I've heard the word a few times this morning, and a couple of people quoted Lao Tzu or others attribute Gandhi to the phrase, "You have to be the change that you want to see." So I think that's pertinent, because my area of interest is the leadership of innovation, or when you boil it back, the behaviours that you need to change, or actually encourage business leaders to change in order to drive innovation. And obviously we've worked with Andy around better understanding circular economy innovation, as I term it. Because for me, and I think somebody mentioned it this morning, to encourage businesses to adopt circular economy practices, which is probably a more accurate phrase, I think it's better to talk in terms of circular economy innovation. Because businesses usually understand innovation. You all understood the term innovation when I asked you to stand up. Or did you stand up? And so for me, it seems sensible to talk to businesses about circular economy innovation. Okay, so I'm going to just reveal some findings from a survey that we did in collaboration with Andy and the KESME project, which is a circular economy for SMEs across Europe project. Okay, so we didn't have huge numbers of respondents, unfortunately. That's unfortunately the challenge you get when you're working with SMEs. They don't tend to like to complete surveys. And again, about 90% of SMEs are micro businesses, so they've got even less time to complete surveys. But those were the numbers. That was the response rate as a percentage of SMEs, basically of the population. What were we trying to achieve? Well, it was a relatively crude survey, but we wanted to understand better whether SMEs understand the term circular economy. And we also want to understand who is, as in, which sectors and size SMEs are engaged in circular economy innovation. For obvious reasons, as it's been mentioned today, Wales is leading in terms of circular economy practices. So for Welsh Government, in order for them to focus resources, then it was useful to understand that. And obviously Andy was feeding back into the Cross-European project, that's the Interreg project, that was reporting and looking at practices across the EU. And we also wanted to get SMEs along to an innovation event to talk to them about the benefits of circular economy, explain what the circular economy is about, and actually point at tools that Andy's just mentioned, so the BSI standard, which was then about to be published, and also encourage them generally to look at and think about how they can innovate in terms of circular economy, and how that can, as we've been introduced this morning, how that can make them think more about their products, particularly if you're in manufacturing, and actually in most industries, to think of their product as a service, and then how you can, or actually encourage them to think about the business model behind that. So what did we find? Apologies about the size, it looked bigger on my screen, honestly. Probably looks a bit small at the back. So we found what most of you might generally predict. Manufacturers tend to be the most innovative or the most engaged in innovation. Construction very close behind is what we found. Unfortunately, if I'd have known Emma was going to be here, then I'd make sure construction come in a very close second. And they were most likely to have introduced new products or services in the last 3 years. What's also interesting and yet probably obvious, those with a formal innovation process were more likely to have introduced new products or service in the last 3 years. And actually those with a formal process improvement or new product development process, again, are more likely to have introduced circular economy related innovation. It was more encouraging on the waste management side of things. So more businesses had a waste management policy or strategy than they did generally a formal process improvement or new product development policy. And encouragingly, 80% of those with a waste management policy reported reducing waste over the last 3 years, most over the last year. And unfortunately, those without a waste management policy don't appear to be doing much in terms of innovation. The other thing that we wanted to find out, and I'm summarising the report here, it will be published next month, and we'll put that out, Andy and I'll put it out through our networks, but if you do want to see the full report, then get in touch and I'll let you know what that is. It'll be published on Swansea University site to start with. We also wanted to find out how well the circular economy tool was known, and generally speaking, it wasn't very well known at all. We used a Likert scale, and basically only about half of the known, I suppose, the way it was known was 2.5 in terms of leaders of an organisation, and in terms of the shop floor, only about 1.4-ish was the understanding in terms of the shop floor. So the term's not very well known at all. As you can understand, or as you probably predict, medium-sized firms, so those employing more than 50, were much more likely to be engaged in innovation and circular economy innovation when it comes to that. Okay. So, encouragingly, but we do obviously get response bias when you ask businesses about what innovation they're engaged in. You tend to get those that are engaged in innovation responding to the survey. So we did have that, but encouragingly, the majority of respondents were looking at their working practices and innovating generally. So in terms of what we suggested, what we've recommended to Welsh Government that they might want to look at, based on the findings, was that a targeted policy might be useful. So we did start with thinking potentially a general publicity campaign around circular economy might work, and yet probably, you know, as anybody knows that is in comms, they're not cheap, comms campaigns, and actually it's a very long and slow process to get people to not only understand the term, but then start adopting the term is another phase and challenge again. So a targeted policy in terms of publicity and getting people to understand the term, and obviously trying to align it with innovation, because generally most firms, particularly those in our survey, understood innovation as a positive aspect of what they do. We also thought it'd be very useful to get first and second tier manufacturers where possible, or suppliers, particularly we've heard about public sector procurement, but as public sector procurement can, if and when you can get it to encourage circular economy innovation, particularly around 5, 10, 15-year product or service agreements, then we think you'll get a lot more circular economy related service offerings being suggested by SMEs. But for us as well, it's actually getting the first and second tier size firms, first and second tier manufacturers, to encourage their supply chain to engage in circular economy innovation, or innovation of any kind really, just to ensure that it actually gets the entire chain moving. Steve this morning talked about systems, and yeah, most services, definitely almost every product is a product of a supply chain and a system. So it's actually encouraging that entire system to engage in innovation. And if you're an SME, it's very difficult to innovate on your own. And so what we'd suggest, or what we would suggest to lots of government, is if you can get those first and second tiers, not only talking to their suppliers, but actually encouraging their suppliers to work with them on innovation, particularly service economy, then that would help immeasurably. I do have construction firms up there, as you can see. Anything else I'm not covered? Medium size are more active, as I've mentioned. And the other significant area which we think would bear fruit quite quickly would be if we could encourage those SMEs without a waste management policy to adopt one. There's about a fifth of SMEs don't have a waste management policy, and those that do are reducing waste in various ways, and so therefore having a circular economy benefit. I'm conscious I've run through a lot of bullet points and slides, so if anyone does have questions, feel free to fire them up. If I've got much time left, I'm conscious I'm out of time. So the kind of good news is, I suppose, I'm running a project which I've enticingly called Developing Innovation Performance of Supply Chain Clusters. Unfortunately, academics and well, Welsh Government as well are guilty of needing an acronym for everything, but yeah, it's called that. The typeface is small, but in essence what we're doing is encouraging SMEs to tell us about a supplier, ideally a customer, a large customer of theirs, and then we're inviting to facilitate a new product development process with them so that they can work with either supplier or customer or both to develop a new product or service. So that's a program that I've just launched. I had a briefing event yesterday at the university, so if any of you've got interest in that, then give me a shout after this, or any questions or thoughts. And we're working with the Smart Expertise people within Welsh Government and Smart Cymru, who do have funding for innovation of various kinds, but particularly product innovation. Okay, that's what it looks like in a bit more detail, which is too small, which I won't go through now. And that was the sector split in terms of innovation, which hasn't come out as it should have. So, apologies for that, and I think that kind of finishes me off, unless anyone's got any questions or thoughts they want to fire in.
Well, we can certainly, we're at that stage where we're going to open it up to the room and have a discussion, so